Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of the FNN Politics and Power Series. I'm your host, Mellissa Thomas. Thank you, as always, for tuning in every week. This week, we have a candidate for office. This go round, we won't be speaking with an elected official, but someone who's running for office. Last week, you saw us speaking with another candidate, Sandra Fatney, who is running for Orange County District 2. Now we are going up a little bit. We're talking to a candidate for the Florida House. We will be talking to another Mellissa Myers. She is the candidate for Florida House District 45, which is soon to be vacated by Representative Camilla Brown because she is currently running for another seat. So, just in case you don't know anything about Mellissa Myers, she is someone who is in Central Florida. Her base is in Ocoee. She does a lot of community work. So this is someone similar to what you guys heard in my conversation last week with Sandra Fatme. This is someone who is in the community very frequently. She does a lot of volunteer work. She does a lot of work with nonprofit organizations. We will get into that in our interview. This is one of the recent initiatives with Cast with a Cop. So we'll get into that conversation so you guys can hear a little bit more in detail about that. She owns her own consulting firm called Just Rights. So we'll talk about that as well during the course of the interview. And of course, with any political candidate, we always want to know A, what inspired them to run, and in this case, what inspired Mellissa to run for Florida House, and what makes her the best candidate. So without further ado, welcome Mellissa to the show. Mellissa, how's it going?
It's going great. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me, Melissa.
No problem. Melissa, this is the trick. So I like to always start my show off asking folks, since we are still in the COVID-19 pandemic, I do like to ask all of my guests, like, how have you been holding up in the pandemic? And now that things are starting to pick up again with, the new Delta variant, how have you and your family been holding up during the course of the pandemic?
It was a huge adjustment for the entire country, right? For my family specifically, it caused us to be a little bit more creative, and it actually made us closer. Under lockdown, being stuck home, we always had family game night, but we have it more often now, right? um,
Right.
we have the movie night where I have the little buckets and I put their snacks in it, and their drinks like they're at the movies. And I also bought a projector screen with a projector. So we have movie under the stars and things like that.
Wow.
So it just caused us to be more creative. It caused us to have conversations, about our thoughts about COVID, about what's going on in our country, So
Hmm.
it made me realize I have some really smart kids. So it brought us closer. So we found a silver lining out of it.
That's great. That's great to hear. And then off camera, you were letting me know you actually recently added to the family during the course of the pandemic. So how has that altered the dynamic of the family any, or is kind of pretty much the same?
Well, it definitely has, having a little mini me running around and running the show. She definitely runs the show. I had her a couple of weeks before the shutdown.
Wow.
So it was during a very scary time being in the hospital. Um, because that was right away. That was around the time we had to be masked up.
Right.
Being in the hospital, couldn't have visitors, so the restrictions were very, um, it was different. It was different.
Right.
It was scary, but I made it through it.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And glad to hear that everything is well. Baby is
Yes,
safe,
yes,
safe and okay in at home.
yes.
For sure. For sure. Kind of briefly talk about your thoughts, especially now that you are running for public office, kind of from that perspective, as someone who would be involved in lawmaking, prospectively. What are your thoughts on how the state handled the COVID-19 response?
I I understand economics is a great concern, as everyone was affected. Me being a business owner of a staffing firm, my business was affected greatly. I feel like at the same time we shouldn't rush
Hmm.
We should take the proper protocols because ultimately we want to ensure the health and the safety for our citizens. So, I can't say whether or not it would have, if we would have waited a little bit longer or not, would it would have helped? I tend to think it would have, but I know economics was a great concern because we had finances were you know dropped dramatically between families and businesses. It put everyone in a financial a dire strait.
Hmm. Makes sense. And, thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. Appreciate that. And to be honest with you, I feel the same way you do. I think a little more of a wait time might have been helpful just in
Right,
terms
just a little
of
bit, yes.
just just to ensure a little bit more safety. And then, at least this is a whole other conversation, but now we're kind of in the throes of folks who are still holding up the wall of vaccine hesitancy versus folks that have it and some who've gotten the vaccine and are now contracting it again.
Right.
And there's that the rush of correct information versus misinformation and kind of the internet of things. But we'll continue to keep the conversation going, guys. So stay tuned.
Yes.
We're going to take a very brief commercial break. When I say very brief, like grab a tip of water on the tongue and come right back, kind of brief, okay? We'll be right back to continue the conversation. Stay tuned.
Catch a wave of excitement with the new Guy Harvey $500,000 Florida Cash Scratch Off, featuring tons of cash and one-of-a-kind promotional prizes. Get yours today. The Florida Lottery. It's your ticket. Claim it.
And we are back with the FNN Politics and Power Series. I'm back with Mellissa Myers, candidate for Florida House District 45. So, like getting into the nitty gritty of the campaign. Firstly, let folks know why choose to run for Florida House District 45. Like, what inspired you to run for the Florida House?
I There was a defining moment.
Hmm.
As many people know, I actually have teamed up with the Ocoee firefighters because
Hmm.
our first responders, they have been enduring low pay, not getting physicals. One of the fire stations don't even have a generator. It's a long list of concerns and issues. So had been very vocal on behalf of the union. Um, I actually sit in with the bargaining agreements between the firefighters and the city's attorney.
Hmm.
With that, um, I was I was preparing for the meeting the night before, and I was just thinking about all the things that the firefighters were going through, and I got emotional. I was angry, and it came to me, and I said, you know what? If they're treating the first responders like this, who am I? These
Hmm.
are the men and women who risk their lives to save ours. And if we don't do right by them, there's a problem. There's a huge problem. So at that point, I'm just thinking, and I got really upset. And I said, you know what? It's time. I'm tired of, not to say that I was sitting on the sidelines, but that was the defining moment where I said, I'm ready to take it to the next level. I don't consider myself a politician. I kind of consider myself a community leader who's taking it to the next level.
Got you. Now, for aside from that's definitely a defining moment that's important. What are some of the other in your community work? What are some other pain points that you've encountered that you're taking with you? Like in terms of like, say you get elected and you head to Tallahassee. What are some of the other issues that you've heard in the community that you would plan to take with you?
Mental health is one. Um, we have a situation where John Celestine, he was killed by a Coy police officer. He was tased and he went into cardiac arrest and died. With that, John's mother had called the Ocoee Police Department, because he was having a schizophrenic bipolar episode. So the Ocoee Police Department, they were dispatched to the call. So while John was hogtied, he was tased and he went into cardiac arrest and he died. my concern with that is, number one, there is no reason why a police officer should be dispatched to a call without a mental health professional with them. Police officers are not trained to deal with those types of situations. I understand
Mm-hmm.
there's de-escalation training, but that's completely different from dealing with someone who's having a mental health episode. We have mental health counselors who are trained, who are licensed, who intern and years of experience, to earn their license, So I feel that it will be best, number one, to have mental health counselors with the police officers when they're being dispatched to those type of calls. Secondly, along with mental health, there is no resources for individuals who lose their jobs, who is dependent on medication for their mental health illnesses. Prime example, I was recruiting for a particular position, a candidate applied. I spoke with the candidate, and naturally, I asked the candidate, I said, hey, what happened to your last opportunity? Why are you looking for work? He states that his hours were reduced due to COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and when the hours were reduced, was no longer able to afford his medication. He ended up having
Mm-hmm.
a bipolar episode at work and lost his job. My frustration is this: we're not being proactive; we're being more reactive. If we don't handle things at the beginning, it causes a domino effect of issues. So here, he couldn't afford his medication. He lost his job.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, it doesn't turn into homelessness. Okay, he's homeless. He has another bipolar episode, and he's in public at this point. So then, at that point, police are called.
Right.
He's either arrested and now has an arrest record, or even worse, he's harmed and he loses his life. So having to be more proactive than reactive when it comes down to the care of our citizens. Another thing that's the pain point for me is career development and career training.
Mm-hmm.
They are not teaching in schools anymore how to write a resume, interviewing skills, and we need to better prepare our youth as well as adults when it comes down to more opportunities for career development. In turn, once again, it's a domino effect. And you'll hear me talking a lot about the domino effect because
Mm-hmm.
if we're not targeting things on the front end, guess what happens if they don't have the proper training? The domino effect is finances. And most people who have issue with finances, they may lead into a life of crime. It may lead into homelessness. It may lead into further stress, So we need to be able to prepare our citizens in order to be successful in their own lives so they can take care of their families. So another thing, it's holding city leaders accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Holding them accountable when it comes down to making sure our tax dollars are being spent appropriately. You know, like for example, the city of Ocoee has spoke about having a healthy budget. Okay, well, why can't we have mental health counselors with the police
Mm-hmm.
officers? Why we aren't properly paying the firefighters? Um, we're building an over $20 million new city hall, and we talk about a healthy budget, but the priorities are out of order. So putting priorities in order for the citizens.
Got you. Thanks for breaking that down. And I wanted to kind of back up a little bit and go back to the mental health aspect and even what you talked about in terms of the curriculum in schools. That's going to be extremely important as well. Like going back to what you were saying in terms of the domino effect, like
Yes,
those everything has its ripple.
yes,
Um, Give me your thoughts on in terms of because some states have initiatives where they're replacing the law enforcement officer altogether with someone who's more of a mental health counselor. Like the law enforcement person wouldn't show up; it would just be like the mental health person showing up. Would you prefer that approach as only the mental health person coming, or kind of like what you recommended before, like the law enforcement person with the mental health counselor?
law enforcement with the mental health counselor. I would not suggest taking law enforcement out of it completely. I personally don't agree with that. It is their job to protect and serve. Um,
Mhm.
and along with that, having a partnership with a mental health counselor, I feel like it's better with a partnership versus causing that separation. Because at the end of the day, anyone that's having a mental health episode is can be very unpredictable. So we don't want to put the mental health counselor in any type of jeopardy or harm, going out to that type of call alone.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So you touched on this a little bit just now in terms of the accountability part, but I did want to ask you what would make you why decide to run for Florida House as opposed to county or county commission or city council? Why run for Florida House? So go ahead.
So that was I thought about that, and I thought about that for weeks before I filed. And when I kind of dissected which I should go with, I felt that being state representative, House will be more beneficial, or I could make more of an
Mhm.
impact for the community being in that seat versus being a commissioner or working at the lower level. So I feel like I could make more of an impact in Tallahassee, to make change.
And it's kind of a dovetail to that. Um, had you done research in terms of being in the Senate versus being in the House, or were you perfectly focused on the Florida House itself?
I was focused on the Florida House, and mind you, it was not my plan to run for House. I actually attend Political Leadership Institute. My professor is Mark Mills, and
Mm-hmm.
he is the one who brought the idea to me. And I'm like, okay, Mark, are you kidding me? Type of thing. Um, so it wasn't my plan, and it was initially my plan to do something more local, like maybe running for commissioner for the city of Ocoee. That was my original plan. But after
Mm-hmm.
being in class and being in the Political Leadership Institute, which I believe I graduate next week, from the program.
That's happening.
Yes. So it made me think, it made the wheels turn. I look at the things that, Camille Brown has done. I looked at what
Mm-hmm.
Bruce Anton has done. And I'm just like, you know what? I want to carry that baton. So even though it was a little scary at first, but when I looked at the change and the impact that I can make, it made me know that this is the best decision for me.
Gosh, that makes sense. Now, going back to your community engagement, I just want to have you talk about that more in detail so our audience can learn, a little bit more about you and how you were able to learn so much about the things that the city of Ocoee needs. Kind of, just go into some of the organizations you've worked with, the projects you've been able to accomplish.
Okay, so I'm going to say this publicly. I blame Commissioner George Oliver. My thought was not politics. That was not my plan. But I was his campaign manager for his reelection campaign. I had no campaign knowledge. Never worked with politics before, but you know what? I guess with my organization skills, he seen something in me that he knew that was great, right? So that's how I got into politics, and that's how I got closer into dealing with different matters in the city. So being Georgia's campaign manager, I actually got a chance to speak with a lot of individuals. Hearing them, hearing their desires, hearing their pain points, being introduced to the firefighters. At that point, because I had gained that relationship with working with the firefighters, constantly going before the commission and bringing up different issues that I felt that was a concern for the city, you know, it made me say, you know what? I'm going to go to this coffee with a cop event, and I'm going to talk with the police officers. I have an idea on how we can bridge the gap between the community and the police officers. And they welcomed
Hmm.
me with open arms, and partnering with different community events. So, yes, so I blame Commissioner Oliver Thanks, Commissioner, for bringing me closer to politics. But when it comes down to volunteering, that's nothing new for me.
Right.
I'll say over a decade of volunteering. I had 10 years ago, there was a community cleanup. We were cleaning up a park in the neighborhood called Carver Shores here in Orlando, Florida. And I was working side by side with Mayor Buddy Dyer. And at that point, I was able to have a conversation and tell him my concerns about the community. This is a decade ago. So
Hmm.
I've always had a heart for the community. I've always been compassionate. I've always been that voice for others who didn't know where to start or didn't know who to speak to. If I have to be that person to stand up for our communities, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm called to do.
Very well said. Very well said. So for our audience, of course, you've shared a lot so far, and definitely appreciate that. And of course, the big question in everyone's mind is, okay, what makes you the best candidate? Like, what would separate you from some of the others? Should there be competition in terms of House District 45?
It's very simple. I am not someone who's saying that this is what I will do or what I am going to do. My track record speaks for itself. I've done and accomplished quite a bit just as a citizen. I've spoken up for individuals just as a citizen. I could have sat back and say, hey, that's not my problem. But guess what? When I see there's an issue, I'm going to stand up for what's right. So, as you're looking at other candidates and whoever may jump into the race, I want you to
Mhm.
look at what have they done for their community. A lot of the things that I've done in the past year, it was during the pandemic. Because guess what? Our communities were at need. I didn't use the excuse of, okay, there's a shutdown or whatever it may be. The community still need me. The community still needed a voice. So I would say, look at my resume. Look what I've already done for the community. And if I've done that as a citizen, just imagine what I would do when you elect me as your next House representative for District 45.
Awesome. And then, very briefly, guys, I did want to show you a quick video. They had the Cast with a Cop initiative where she was able to have the youth gather together and go fishing with members of the Ocoee Police Department. So take a look at this quick clip.
I came from an era where police officers were an extension of a parent, a friend. And the climate that we're living in today is very important, where we try to circle back and bring that community together between the police officers and the citizens. So that was very important to me for us to have this event and more events that we're going to have in the future. This event turned out perfect. It's going to grow, it's going to get bigger, but this was perfect as we were able to put our pulse on how we can orchestrate and how we can put it together. But just a big thank you for the Ocoee Police Department for partnering and making this happen and having compassion for the community and connecting together.
That I thought was very important, especially given the climate with law enforcement versus the community during the pandemic. Things reached a fever pitch in the wake of George Floyd's death. So, kind of talk a little bit about that event. How did it feel? How gratifying was it for you to be able to kind of see the community and and law enforcement getting along together?
Oh my gosh, it was just so touching. Everyone had such a fantastic time, and we're actually doing it again this Saturday. They had a great time, and it gave an opportunity for me to really see the hearts of the police officers. It was about 10 or 15 officers that were there. Um, to see how much they enjoyed it. And a couple of the officers pulled me to the side, and they were like, Mellissa, this is what we want to get back to. We want to get back to the community policing. This is what we want to do. We want to get closer, to our community. And with them saying that, that let me know, okay, I'm doing something right. We also have a class that's coming up where Deputy Chief Vince Ogburn, where he's teaching new drivers what to do when you're pulled over by the police officers. So that will be on the 31st. So we're having that class. And with that, they're going to do some role playing. They're going to do some role reversal. So that will show each other, kind of show the police officers, how the youth um, look at the police officers and, making
Mhm.
light of everything, right? So, and once again, creating that open dialogue, creating that open conversation, that the police officers need to have with the community. There is no the police officers aren't going anywhere. So why can't we bridge that gap and bring everyone together and get on one accord?
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. We're going to keep the conversation going, guys. We're going to take one more quick commercial break. We'll be right back.
We wanted to move back home to be closer to his family. We decided to go with pods because things were stressful enough.
We weren't sure how long we were going to need storage for, so we needed something that was flexible, and then they can deliver the container to wherever we move to.
We haven't found the perfect house yet, but we're still looking.
And we are back with the FNN Politics and Power Series. We're here with Mellissa Myers, candidate for Florida House District 45. So, getting into Mellissa as the person, we certainly heard about your work in the community. One of the things, and you're somebody who, as you described, someone who can't sit still.
Right.
So, on those days where you're juggling a lot, you're wearing a lot of hats, you have a lot of things going on. You're a mom of 5, is that correct?
Yes.
5.
Yes.
So on those days when things are a bit trying, when things are not quite going as well as you might like, or there may be a few walls that you're encountering, how do you normally remain tenacious? What are some of the things that you use to keep things moving?
You know what? Number one, being a mother of 5, I have some awesome kids, and I know everyone says that about their children, right? But I really have some awesome children. Like my oldest son, he's 19. He's a real estate agent now. He passed his real estate exam, and now he's with Keller Williams. Um,
Nice.
we I have great kids. Everyone knows what they need to do around the house. Everyone has their chores and they know what to do, and they all pitch in. They have a heart like mine. We are preparing for a back to school drive, and everyone was pitching in, stuffing the book bags, and just having such a great time. And I think they just have a heart like their mother, to where they love to give back to the community. The kids have
Hmm.
been out with me to the food drives and things like that, and helping out. So they're always pitching in. Now, with that, things do get tough, running a business, being a mother, running a
Hmm.
campaign, it's a lot. But with that, when you do something that you love, when you do something that you're passionate about, it's not work. Speaking up for the community doesn't work for me. Me running my business, that's my passion. Because I have 20 years of HR experience,
Hmm.
and I transitioned that and opened up my own staffing firm. And just being a mother to 5 amazing kids who just pitch in and help whenever needed, that keeps me going. There has been times where I just been frustrated, and I have my oldest son that comes along and just say, "Mom, you got this. We got this." I have 2 amazing parents that's such a great help. I have a whole community of friends that, that's a great support system for me. And I thank you guys for being such a great support system, because I'm a firm believer it takes a village. So I have
Hmm.
a strong village behind me. They believe in me. When I, discussed with the family and my friends that I was thinking about running, they all told me it's about time.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that this is a whole other conversation, but isn't it always interesting when like the folks around you confirm what you've been thinking about doing, maybe shying away from, and they're just like, we knew it, like we
Yes.
saw it in you.
Yes.
So that's beautiful that they saw that in you. We're like, it's about time. Like,
About
good.
time. One
We're
person,
behind you.
one person was like, "Duh." I'm like, "What?" Like, "Oh, we seen it coming." Like, "Oh, okay. I didn't see it coming, but okay."
Like, okay, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So far, given the projects that you've been able to do, whether that's before or after Commissioner Oliver got you involved in Ocoee directly in terms of the political side of it, what
Mhm.
has been a project that has been the most meaningful for you?
I have a nonprofit called Just Right Consulting Inc.
Hmm.
um, Being in HR for so long, HR and recruiting, doing job fairs and looking at resumes and things like that, I noticed that there was a gap in our community where people didn't know how to give an effective interview. People didn't know how to write a resume. Individuals didn't know how to show up to a job fair or an interview. They were not being dressed properly. So, career development is my passion. I founded the nonprofit to educate the community on how to write a resume, how to properly give an interview. One-on-one career consulting for an individual who don't know where to start in their career or someone who wants to s- do something new in their career, as well as computer training. So my nonprofit offer these classes to educate the community, once again to empower the community. And then once the community is empowered, then guess what? You have economic growth, you have families that are happy, that decreases crime. So that was my way of doing my part with the community, is using my experience, my career experience, and putting it into the nonprofit to empower our communities.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that. And I mean, that is very much a need at this point, especially given the pandemic and the drastic work shift that happened during the pandemic. Everyone was forced to go remote during the lockdown, but now, even with the country opening up, the workforce will never be the same again. Many of the companies have chosen to remain hybrid or, slash their workforce when they realize that they don't need as many people present. And
Hmm.
then for the folks that are coming back out of the work from home environment, they got used to being at home. You know what I mean? They're used to either spending more time with their families or just being in a less stressful environment compared to being in the workplace.
Yes.
So preparing is definitely something important. So we, definitely kudos to you in terms of the work you're doing for, with the Just Right consulting firm.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So we are going to wrap up, guys. We're going to take one final commercial break and then wrap up with Mellissa Myers. All right, stay tuned. This is another brief, like wet your tongue commercial break. Okay, we'll be right back.
At Taco John's, you can expect one thing: so good. As in quality ingredients used in tacos and burritos made just for you. Every single bite.
So good.
Expect nothing less at Taco John's.
And we are back with the FNN Politics and Power Series. We're wrapping up here with Mellissa Myers. Mellissa, kind of, if there's anything that we haven't discussed here that you feel our audience should know, by all means, let them know.
With my campaign, my message is, let's put our passion into action. We, as individuals, as citizens, we tend to have these conversations amongst ourselves. We tend to, have these conversations on social media on how we are unhappy the way that things are for
Mhm.
various of reasons. Let's put our passion into actions mean just that. Those discussions that we've had behind closed doors or maybe on social media, it's time to take that passion and that conversation, and let's put it into action. Let's put it into action to make change for our communities. No more talking about it. Let's just team up and empower our communities together. Because guess what? When I win this House seat, I will still be reaching out to the communities. I will still be engaging and talking with the individuals of the communities, because guess what? You are the ones that are affected. So I need to know from you, what are your concerns? So let's put our passion into action. Let's push forward. Let's make change in our community. Let's empower our communities. And that's what I will do for you, continue to do for you once I win District 45.
And let folks know where they can find out more about you and more about your campaign.
You guys can visit my website at www.melissasmyers.com. That's MEL, 1L, ISSASMYERS.com.
All right. And just for your convenience, guys, it is right below. So make sure you visit the website, learn a little bit more about Mellissa. And she's on Facebook and Instagram as well. So if you guys want to take a look at some of the work that she's been doing in the community, you can check her out in those locations as well. Mellissa, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. We appreciate you here at Florida National News. And, it was good seeing you the other night during the legislative update. So getting to learn more about your campaign there as well.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
you.
having me, Melissa. It's been a great pleasure. It's always a pleasure with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in, as always, to the FNN Politics and Power Series. And again, our show is Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, whether that is live or recorded, but you will always catch me at Tuesdays at 1 p.m. And of course, we interview those who are running for office, those who are elected officials, or those working in the public sector who are community leaders and influencers. We will continue to keep the conversation going. And please, by all means, we welcome you guys to join the conversation. So if you haven't yet, be sure to like, share, subscribe, follow, all that fun stuff. You can find us at Florida National News on Facebook and on YouTube. If you want to subscribe on YouTube, make sure to click the little bell icon so you don't miss a single video. And of course, on Instagram, we're there at Florida National News as well. We want to be as easy to remember and easy to find as possible. As you saw, we also run ads on our show. So if you're someone who is looking for a platform on which to advertise, or if you wish to sponsor one of our segments, you can shoot us an email at ads@floridanationalnews.com to find out more. In the meantime, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I will catch you next Tuesday. In the meantime, take great care and be safe.